Have you ever not slept for so long that you started hallucinating? What was your experience? Ex-addict. Was driving home after a 3-day meth bender. Needed food so drove into a McDonald's drive-thru. When asked for my order I replied, "McChicken meal, please." Then they asked me again and I said, "McChicken meal, please." Then they asked me again and I was like, "Can't you fucking hear me? McChicken meal." And that's when I realized I wasn't actually saying anything, I was just replying in my head. A buddy of mine landed a painting job working inside of a big commercial building and he basically stayed in the place for 6 days straight smoking crystal meth and painting to meet his deadline and avoid hiring a crew to help him. On the 6th day the building caught fire and he ran into the lobby and was pulling people out into the streets and yelling to call 911. The firemen showed up and couldn't locate a fire because there was none. He was hallucinating. Fucking shadow people. It's bad for you, you shouldn't do it. But if you're asking this question, you're the type to try. Remember it's not real and relax. Go to sleep. I went roughly 4 days on 5 hours sleep total. I could function fine but I would just constantly hear things like people mumbling right next to me. Yeah, after 70 hours or so. It's pretty disorienting and rational thinking starts to get very slow. The hallucinations are not realistic but are more like gaps in your vision that are shaped like things. Might see a silhouette at a distance or briefly around a corner. Very difficult to function in this state. Would not recommend. Okay, story time. My mom suffers from narcolepsy and one of the first treatments they gave her basically drove her also completely insane. She was up for 5 days. One day I walked into her bedroom hearing her talking to someone. I look around and ask her who she is talking to and she tells me the lady in red. There is no one in the room at all, just us. I ask where is the lady and she says the lady sits on the dresser and talks to her all night. I was like 14 at the time so I went to the kitchen and hid her medicine until my stepdad got home and could take her to the hospital. The doctor was super upset about the meds her doctor had given her, it was way too much. Anyway, she stopped seeing the lady after they got all that straightened out. I stayed up for 3 days straight when I was 17. On the 3rd day, I kept hearing people call my name as if they wanted to ask me a question. It didn't help that I also thought it would be a good idea to go to school that day. Multiple times a day, I would bolt upright and look around to see who wanted to my attention only to see my fellow students huddled over their work. It got worse as the day went. My friends were a little worried about how weird I was acting. I walked home after school, listening to my headphones as usual, but I still kept hearing someone call my name. The music made it worse. Whatever I was hearing was already kind of muffled and having a song playing in my ears only seemed to obscure it more. When I finally got home, I told my mom I wasn't feeling well, went to my room and went straight to sleep, at 4 in the afternoon. As nodded off, I heard that voice calling for me again, making me jerk out of my sleep. This repeated a couple times until I convinced myself that I already told my mom I was sick and if she really needed me, she could come get me. I finally went to sleep and didn't wake until 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and then went to sleep afterwards again until 9 a.m. the next day. I was an idiot. I hadn't slept for about 72 hours when I went to the doc gave me Ambien. I go home, get in bed and take one. A few minutes later, the floor was covered in water and the walls were melting. It was raining outside and the water on my windows was marching in formation. I've never known whether that was sleep deprivation or the effects of Ambien. I've never taken another. Overseas on a deployment, started getting sleep deprived for a period of time. Started hallucinating the big date palm trees moving across the road like in The Lord of the Rings when the trees walk. Yes, I saw shadow creatures and I thought they were out to get me. I suffered from horrific insomnia about 12 years ago. I was on Lexapro and one of the side effects is insomnia. At the time, that wasn't well documented. So I tried everything from Ambien to alcohol so I could sleep. I would usually get about a 3-hour nap at most before being awake again. I would go 3 to 5 days without sleeping. Eventually, I hit the point of desperation and start recreational substances to try and knock myself out. There were several occasions of hallucinations, but the one that sticks out is truly terrible. I was on day 6 without sleeping at least 5 hours. I was laying in bed and a friend came in to start talking with me. We had many great conversations since our friendship began but hadn't talked in a while at that point. I told him how bad I was struggling and that honestly, killing myself would have been easier. He said he felt the same way many times, but that it was a terrible idea and I knew how badly it had messed up his family. When I looked at him, he was a bloody mess on the side of his face. Jaw ripped apart, teeth missing, but talking to me like nothing was wrong. He had been dead for a few years at that point. Suicide. Shot himself in his garage after years of substance abuse. And I just had a 3-hour conversation with a hallucination of a dead friend. I ended up switching meds to Celexa and my sleep issues disappeared within a month. So, if you are having sleeping issues, please, go see a doc. It's a dark place that damn near took me. Once in my early 20s I took acid and didn't sleep at all for like 3 days. At one point on the 3rd day a door told me to go fuck myself and I really wasn't sure if it was from the drugs building up over time or because I was so tired. I guess there's some confusion over the wording but this was not one dose. This was multiple redoses over the course of 3 days with diminishing returns. It's almost a regular occurrence for me by now because I suffer from insomnia. There are 3 different types of hallucinations for me. 1. Funny, useless shit I know is fake. 2. Shit that could be real or not. 3. Extremely scary and traumatic shit I know is fake but rattles me up every single time. Usually, they appear in that order. Pro tip. If you are experiencing visual hallucinations and you aren't sure whether something is real or not, take a photo with your smartphone and look at that. It is very unlikely that you hallucinate the same shit twice and in the exact same position. Works for me, at last. Spent a few weeks only getting about 4 hours of sleep a night. My brain started seeing, from the corners of my eyes, black things dropping from the ceiling that looked like giant spiders. I started making sure I got enough sleep. PLs, don't do this to yourself. If you do, believe me, you will start seeing crap. It's weird. And mentally burdensome and heavy. After a while I start to become seriously paranoid and I start hearing voices and things like that. It's not very fun. I have some serious issues with sleep and sometimes it will get to the point where I will start seeing things out the corners of my eye that aren't actually happening and I manage to scare the shit out of myself. Please get enough sleep. Don't fall into the habit of staying up for days on end. The longer you stay up, the harder it is to fall asleep. Shadow demons coming to get me. They're very fast. During exam week I pulled 3 all-nighters in the library between tests. The library was open 24 hours so I'd just stay up all night making note cards then go take an exam during the day. I lived off campus and didn't want to spend the gas money. I'd go to the most isolated area but the library would pretty much be cleared out by midnight. I started to see glimpses of people and I thought it was a bunch of students fucking with me but there was no one on that floor. I thought the lights went off at some point and maybe it was a sensor so I started jumping around to reactivate it but obviously, it was light the whole time. I didn't have visual hallucinations but auditory. It was like musique and very nice but scary because you didn't know where it came from. No sleep for 4 days straight, it really fucks with your head. All sounds heightened to the max and was sure I could hear all my neighbors talking shit about me.